Hey guys, it's Paul from Montana. I'm working on my old hunting camper. This is a 1965 Red Dale. I've had this for many years and used it for elk hunting. It's a good old camper, but this year I had a propane leak, so I decided to fix it myself. Number one, the number one thing that I'd like to say is I am not a propane guru. This is not what I do for a living. I'm just a guy that, does the research and figures it out and determines that that it's the best that I can do and that it's safe. Quite honestly, in some of these cases, I don't trust other people. I want to do this myself, and I know that I'm pretty thorough. So I've got this all the new tubing and fittings back in this, and I've hooked up this manometer. This is a homemade manometer that hooks up to one of the Venturis down here in the stove. You actually have to heat this up with a heat gun to get it to go onto that Venturi. I just picked the size of tubing that fits on there super tight, so it's not going to be a source of a leak. So at this time, all these valves are closed, nothing's functioning, and the propane is turned on. So I'm going to turn on this propane here and watch what happens. Okay, right now there's no pressure in this manometer. You can see the level 0. They're equal. It's at 0. I'm going to turn on the propane, and it jumps up to somewhere around 9, a little over 9, maybe 10 inches of water. I'm just going to leave it there. A normal test to test the pressure of propane is something less than that. I don't know what it is, and I'm not going to go spouting off stuff I don't know anything about as far as that goes. So now go out here and shut your propane off. Okay, so basically now is what you've done is you've created a pressurized system that should maintain, right at 10 inches of water, or you could just even put a little dash mark on here with a pencil and just let it sit. I don't know how long you want to let it sit. To me, the longer the better, but water in a tube in a manometer system is very touchy. I mean, you can move that just with the slightest decrease in pressure, so it's an amazingly accurate way to find if you have a leak in your propane system. And let me backtrack on some of this stuff here. Again, I am not a propane guy. Don't tackle this kind of stuff if you're not comfortable with it, because it's deadly. I mean, seriously, propane is not something to mess with. Propane fittings, if you don't know what you're doing, find someone who does. Again, like I said, I feel like I'm a very thorough person that does a lot of research, and I'm going to do this job just as good as the guy that you bring it to. So anyhow, when you're dealing with propane, these are flare fittings on copper tubing. Flare fittings, do not use compression fittings like diesel fuel fittings or whatever, air fittings. Do not use them. You have to use flare fittings. The design of this flare pushes the flare of this tubing into the chamfer that's on here, and also the tip of this little flare tube here supports the tubing so that it can't vibrate or come loose or leak. And it takes some practice. If you're going to redo your system, buy some extra copper tubing and do some flaring before you run away with it. I'm not going to show you how to do that stuff. There's guys on the internet world that are pros that have some videos out there that can help you. I'll show you the tools that you need, though. This is a flaring tool for your copper tubing, and it goes hand in hand with this here. Again, YouTube gets you going on that. And this is a tubing cutter. And again, go on YouTube and watch how to use this. You have to have this. You can't cut that tubing straight, or you just can't do it. You have to have one of these awesome little cutters. Any kind of threaded fitting, you want to buy some compound that's for LP or propane gas, because there's a couple threaded connections on here that needed to have this goop put on them. If you don't do that, they're going to leak. You have to goop up your threaded fittings. Don't put goop on the flare fittings, but you have to put it on the threaded fittings, you know, such as the ones that go to your low pressure regulator. So I pulled all the old tubing out of this and replaced it. Let's see where we're at. Like it, we're sitting right at 10. Pulled all the old tubing out of this. I redid all these fittings very, very meticulously. If I didn't like a flare, I cut it off and I redid it. And I got it all put together. And then I opened up this valve and took soapy water. This is soapy water mixed with, dish soap mixed with some soapy water. It's not just simple green. And you just kind of spray it on all your joints like this, you know, nice and gentle. Spray them on your joints and you look for bubbles. If you have a leak, it's obvious. I mean, you'll be getting some large bubbles is a bad leak, and if they're kind of creepy foam, that's kind of, the foam is kind of expanding, you know, out from a joint, that's a really small leak. But nonetheless, you got to fix it. I mean, don't mess around with that. So I had a leak up here actually on this old threaded joint. This is a pipe thread to low pressure regulator, and I took it out, cleaned that up real good, put some more goop on there, put the fitting back in, made sure it was really snug. Don't over tighten. This is casting. You could crack it. Made sure it's very snug. Put this all back together, and then I water tested all my joints, and I could see no bubbles. So right there, I'm like, okay, I think we got this. Again, every joint that you have, everything. This is a joint right here. That's a threaded joint back there. So everything gets that bubbly spray on them. Back here I tested that T, and then I tested the compression fitting going into the furnace. Didn't see any bubbles. One nice thing about how I've piped this is when I've got a little shelf that sits in here, but all these joints are exposed. So every year, if I want to give it a little bubble test, I can, and that's what I do. I don't mess around with this stuff. Make sure your tubing is running in a manner that it's not going to sit and rub on something, or it's not kinked or whatever. See this nice gentle radius I put in here, and it just lines up perfect with the flare when you tighten it up. If you need to put a tighter radius in, you can get a tool. It's like a spring that goes around the tubing. You've probably seen one in a hardware store before, and you've been like, what is that for? It's a spring that goes around, and when you bend it, it supports it so it doesn't get bent, you know. Anyhow, I won't get too much into that stuff because I'm just not the kind of guy that wants to give out all that kind of information, because if you mess this up, it's dangerous. Don't mess around with your propane system. If you're rough on your camper like I am, and you take it in all these crazy places, test it. You know, maybe once or twice a year. Maybe hook up your manometer and test it, or do the bubble test. I hope this is some good information, and helps you maybe with the kind of troubles you're having with your old camper. All right, thanks for watching.